Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm on my way to Functional Patterns. It's an exercise gym that I go to specifically designed for the human body. But as I'm on my way, I want to take a moment to talk about a story that happened to me when I was on vacation over this weekend in Cleveland, Tennessee. It was about what happened when I saw a lady and I asked her if I could pray a healing prayer for her, and she said no. So that's a little different than what you might normally hear if you are a part of a church or a community that believes Jesus is still a healer today, and he's commissioned his people to go and pray and proclaim healing in his name. And just for what it's worth, I have friends in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. I have friends in Cleveland, Tennessee, the heart of the Bible Belt. I've got friends in Maryland, and I've got friends here in Georgia. So that group of people across the board, various states, are the people that I'm referring to. My friends who are part of a church or a community that believes healing is still for today and God can administer it through the power of his Spirit, through his people. So I see this lady, and me and my wife are at Tropical Smoothie, and this lady gets out of the car and she's by herself, and she's really struggling just to make it to the door. She's got a cane, but each step has taken her about 5-10 seconds, and I just felt prompted to get up from what I was doing and go and open the door for her. I wasn't leaving, but I just wanted to be generous and offer hospitality in a sense and just welcome her and help her, make it easier for her to get in. And she was really touched by it. She said thank you multiple times just in that moment. But then when she realized that I wasn't on my way out holding the door, I was actually all the way at the back of the store and I came to do it, she really lit up with joy, and she was just glowing. And she even made it a point to come and tell my wife, thank you for letting him come and open the door for me. And obviously I was grateful and just happy to help. But as she was standing there, I just felt flooded with compassion. I felt the compassion of Jesus for her, and it was like making me want to cry. I could hardly contain it. It was just overflow of compassion and life just on the inside of me. And then I felt prompted to go and ask her if I could pray for her. I wanted to see this through, and I felt like this was the compassion of the Lord, as in the Gospels it was said he was moved with compassion, and he let that compassion lead to action, which led to his power flowing through him for the benefit of someone else. A supernatural miracle would happen. And so I felt his presence so strongly, so convinced that it was him, that when she sat down, I went up to her and I said, hey, I only have a couple minutes to talk because we're about to leave, so I don't have much time, but is it okay if I pray a healing prayer for you? And I said, do you mind? And she looked at me and she says, actually, yes, I do mind. And I said, okay. And I had to make a choice in my mind. Do I stick with the power and the flow that I felt on the inside of me and say, and let that be the deciding factor on whether I continue to move forward with my engagement with her? Or do I honor her choice, respect her wishes in this moment and her dignity, and see her as a fellow human being that has a right to decide what happens to her? And obviously I felt somewhat disappointed because I truly had faith in the moment that Jesus could heal her. I think as I said, she had a stroke, and it affected a lot of her cognitive and even physical ability to move. She had a cane, and it was just really hard for her. But she invited me to sit down, even though she said no. And so I sat down with her, and now I'm just curious, after the words of affirmation and the sense of appreciation that she expressed, and the joy she felt of being seen, someone helped her. She said no, and I was curious to find out at least, what the barrier was. And so she said, after she invited me to sit down, that she actually was Jewish. And she said, I don't believe in your God the way that you believe. And, my first thought was like, how do you know what I believe? But again, we're in the Bible Belt, so, she might have just put two and two together. So she tells me a little bit about what she believes and why she didn't want to receive prayer. And so I'm listening to her. But then she said, God actually spoke to me and said, this young man cares. He's going to approach you and ask for prayer if he can pray for you. So just know that he's doing it because he cares. He's a compassionate young man. And I found that interesting that she said, and she believed that the Lord spoke to her in that regard to kind of like prepare her. And so even though she had said no to me, she was still welcoming. She still was willing to keep the conversation going. It didn't cause her or me to just like shut down. So I said, okay. Well, as I said, I only have a couple minutes, so I gotta go here in a second. But I'm from Atlanta, so I'm just passing through. I'm not part of a church here, so I just want you to know I'm not trying to like recruit you to a church. And my motivations really are because this figure that we read about in the New Testament, specifically the Gospels, went around doing healings, and signs and wonders flowed through him. And he said, he commissions his followers to go out and do the same thing. And so I believe that his spirit is still alive today, that he died and rose again, and his spirit's on his people, and that he's given us the ability in his name to bring healing to people around us. And so that really is the only thing I wanted to see. And I believe that is an expression of the Father's heart towards humanity. And so that's why I was coming. But I guess bottom line is, since you said what you said about me being a compassionate young man, I just want to tell you that is the compassion of the Father, and that he loves you. And even though he'd rather me not pray for you, God is for you, and he's doing a work, in your life. And just want to bless you. And that was pretty much it. And she said, okay, I can accept that. And I said, all right, well, I'll see you. Good luck on your recovery, and take care. And despite saying no and being disinterested, in fact, insisting that I do not pray for her, she still was willing to keep the connection, because the connection wasn't based on me performing something on her. It was based on seeing her as someone who has dignity and is a fellow image bearer of God. And so the connection there is bigger than whether she would let me pray for her or let me not pray for her. And I'm telling this story because I think it's important, because moments like these can lead to awkwardness. It could lead to us feeling apologetic, like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry, but truly we can request in honoring their dignity if we could pray for them, or we can't. And I believe that taking this approach as a way to see healing flow through, and someone who is a stranger that we don't know, that we don't have a connection with just outright, really is embodying the way of Jesus. He didn't just tell us what to do, he showed us how to do it in his interactions with other people. And I think expressing his character is just as important as seeking to have his power flow through us. And it would have been so easy for me to try to override her will and take a position of power over her because of how intense I felt the compassion of Jesus being. Like I said, it's compassion. I felt this compassion for her so strong that I was like tearing up. I could hardly contain it. And even my wife was like, we know what's going on, and I had to tell her because she saw a physical interruption. And yet the lady said, yes, I do mind. Please don't pray for me. So, again, that wasn't the end of it. That was the beginning now of a conversation and continuing to connect with curiosity from someone who's modeling the Paraclete, which the power of the Holy Spirit. It's funny, he's called the Paraclete, one who comes alongside, not over top, looking down on people for what they need that we might have in terms of a solution. And I'll tell you this, if I ever see the lady again, I'm 100% sure her eyes would light up with joy and she'd be so glad to see me. She wouldn't avoid me. It wouldn't be awkward. It would be, oh, I remember you. How are you doing? And I think that is what we need to see, is whether people receive the ministry or an engagement by us that we're led by the Spirit or not, we would conduct ourselves in a way that if we see them again, or if they see us again, it wouldn't be awkward. They wouldn't be uncomfortable necessarily. That there would be a sense of respect and appreciation, at least based on how we conducted ourselves. We can't control how people interpret it. We don't have to over-explain where we're coming from. We can just simply just share why and leave it at that. But the cool thing is, what if I see her again? And what if she changes her mind and says, oh, you could pray for me? Or what if the scriptures that I shared that pointed to Jesus, that formed a basis of my motivation for engaging her, leads her to be open to somebody else praying for her the next time, because now she's at least hearing that what Jesus did was because of compassion, and it was an expression of the Father's heart for people. So I wanted to share that. I know this is different. Most of the reports of healings that I hear that happen when someone else prays for them, through the different states and where I'm at, are usually the reports of a miracle happen. And I think that's really cool. That really is what motivates me to want to go out and take a chance on the Lord to see if he'll move again through me this time, to have his power and his heart and his compassion flow to another person, to touch them in a way that they'll never forget. Like, these miracle reports that I hear encourage me, they inspire me, and they give me courage to go out and attempt to believe him to do it again in the person in front of me's life. However, I don't hear a lot of commentary on what happens when a person says no, and how we should conduct ourselves, and what does the character of Christ look like in terms of our approach in the first place. So I'm not saying my approach is the only approach, but what I am saying is love, compassion, and seeing the dignity of the person in front of you matters, because it mattered to Jesus. And who knows what kind of seed was left, not because of the prayer that I wasn't allowed to pray, but because of the character and the kindness and being able to see her as someone who had dignity and was worth sitting down to and just listening for a moment to see where she was coming from. So with that, that's my weekend story. Bless you guys, and peace.